question, how do we model kind of sweeping roofs like this? There's a couple of things we can do here. One thing is to use the shell tool. Excuse me, I'm getting that cropped off there, but and this might be my preferred method generally is to use shells. So what we're going to want to do is have a custom extruded shell for this. And all we need to do is trace this out, and we'll go ahead and say click there and click there. I'm not worried about the curve just yet, and we'll say that's okay. And maybe the extrusion length is, we'll put it something like 6 feet. It doesn't really matter too much right now. So now we check that shell and we can see that it's actually inverted. So I go to the settings and say flip. We can actually apply a composite. So if you had like the roof covering and all of that, you could say that that's a composite element. In this case, I'm just going to say that this is, we'll say it's 1 inch thick. The thing about this is you'd have to exclude that fascia if it were a composite, and you might want to model that as beams anyway. So we'll go ahead and say okay on that, and we're not going to be too picky about the building materials and the surfaces yet. And then there's that shell. So if we look at this in 3D, and I always like to place a morph cube next to whatever I'm working on. Whenever I'm doing anything with shells or morphs, I like to have an orthogonal plane that I can essentially snap to. So now if I take this shell that I've modeled here, you can see that it's vertical because that's the orientation of the shell to begin with. I can rotate this, and then what I can do is mirror it across this axis right here. I should have options here for the height, the length. I can adjust this after the fact, offset it up. I believe somewhere in here there's a way to offset the length of that shell. But regardless, this will get us the right kind of idea. I might need to redo the shell with a shorter extrusion length. Anyway, if I select these and all 3 of them, right click and say connect and trim elements. We might have to do this a few at a time. Let's use the solid element operation. So if we say that these are the operators and this is the target, and we'll do a subtraction with upward extrusion. That one's now trimmed to here, and then we can say these are the targets, and this is the operator, and trim those back. Now the thing about the shell that gets a little bit messy is these corners, these junctions, whatever you have in SEO, don't really want to clean up. If we do take a step back, we should be able to say merge trim elements to roof and shells. And then we should be able to say that this shell is trimming upward on that. But you can play around with that a little bit. Really, the main thing here is that you're always going to get kind of weird, chunky intersections there. So the other way that we can do this, and maybe a preferred way, is with complex profile beams. So you see here I've kind of drafted out this profile, and obviously I can get even more detailed. I can draw this however I need. If for example we know that this is the depth of our overhang, I could even show a soffit in here. You could show, like here I have the flashing. You do want to be kind of wary of like your level of detail. I know that complex profile beams can report errors if you have too small of dimensions. So some of this stuff you kind of have to be a little bit cautious with. But in this case, I've drafted out essentially what this eave detail is going to look like. I'm going to copy those. They're all fills. I'm going to go into my complex profile manager here, and we're going to say new, and we're going to call this our brow roof profile. We'll put it in our roof folder here. We'll say okay. It wants to duplicate what was already in there. We'll say paste here. And now if you're not, let's paste again, make sure we actually place it. If you're not familiar with complex profiles, the origin here, that 0, 0 point, that's going to be the reference line of your beam or column or wall or whatever you're applying this element to. So if it's really sitting up against the building and that's kind of the critical point is the top, I might line it up there. If it's really about this bottom edge and how that meets the building, I might line it up here. And that should be good to go now. So I want to make sure that it's used with a beam, so it's horizontal. You can apply it to walls, beams, columns, railings, or the object tool is really talking about the stair parts. But it does say library part. We'll go ahead and say save. We'll remove all of the modifiers. You can add additional stretch modifiers if you want. In this case, we're just going to say that this is going to be a simple roof piece. Now when I grab my beam tool, and let's go to our complex profile, and we'll search through for that brow roof. You can see here that reference line right there on the bottom edge is going to be where it meets the wall. So really this piece right here is probably going to be fairly short, but we'll just show it in as a full length right now. And because these are beams, they're really easy to manipulate after the fact. So let's go ahead and grab these and put this right here so we can see exactly how wide that needs to be. We'll put this one to right there. There's our overall width. And then these can come all the way back to here. They do have to have some length. Obviously they can't be zero length, but they can come back to meet the back top edge of essentially right here where that roof meets the wall above. And if this does need to set into the wall so that it's flush right here, you could do that and then just trim it out with the walls as the operator that they're intersecting with. Let's take a look at what this looks like now. If I've done this correctly, then we've got our roof profile right here. You can see I even get that soffit. I get the flashing detail. And because they're beams, that junction right there just miters perfectly. They're 90-degree angles, so it miters perfectly. There's no weird connections. It's even a pretty smooth sloping curve there. So the shell tool is great for these kind of curving roofs, but sometimes you got to go with the profile when you need to intersect them with other element types.